I want to, just talk about a subject that is maybe a little bit hard for people to listen to, boxing fans. Muhammad Ali's downfall. What I will say about Muhammad Ali's return to the heavyweight boxing scene was that it was a long road back. And everyone knows that the 70s is actually, even though Muhammad Ali was well past his athletic peak, he was actually had the better and more memorable and more legacy defining fights. I want to talk about some ramblings today about Muhammad Ali's career and just throw out some musings. You look there at the Quarry fight, and we know that it was the first one after the 3-year exile from boxing, and this fight went a few rounds. But as the Oscar Bonavena fight, we saw glimpses of the old Ali, but he wasn't really as athletic as what he was even in the Zora Foley fight or the Sonny Liston fight. The foot speed wasn't there. Muhammad was standing more and trading more, standing in the centre of the ring, and he was actually able to stand but still be able to use his jab and his right hand pull counters at long range, even with his feet planted, because of the reflexive defense, which was definitely not as good as what it was, say, in the Cleveland Williams fight. You could see he was taking the sting off the jabs, but some of them were still clipping him. And this is in general. I definitely noticed it in this Jimmy Ellis fight. In the Joe Frazier fight, he could have leaned back and still got hit with that hook. But it was clear to see that the foot movement wasn't all there, was it? Muhammad Ali, I just want to confirm that I am correct in saying so. Muhammad seemed to have more fights in the 70s than in the 60s. Well, actually 66, he was very busy. Probably, I'm guessing, to do with draft evasion. He was trying to be international. As we see there, he fought in Earl's Court, and he fought in Germany, Frankfurt, and he fought in Highbury as well against Henry Cooper. Some of these fights, as we see KO, TKO, I know the Cleveland Williams fight was short. I think he only had 2 fights in 65. I know that Liston rematch was rescheduled. 64 he only won because of the injury. Okay, in 63 he had 3. So I think it's safe to say that apart from 60, 61, 62, most of Muhammad Ali's 70s was kind of like what you see 66 there. But he wasn't necessarily knocking guys over. So it was hard fight to hard fight. Whereas in the 60s, it didn't matter so much because he was maybe only knocking a guy out in 5 rounds, and then that would have been enough whereby he could have went into another camp, lay off the sparring just for a month or so, just because you don't want to be getting straight back into sparring. Even if you do have the good stamina and the good fitness. You still want to, give yourself time to neurologically heal, because it probably takes a week just to feel normal again after a heavyweight fight. So let me get to it. So as you see there, you got Frazier. It took a good beating from Frazier, and then he fought Jimmy Ellis that July. So he probably only had a month off, and then he was straight back in camp. I'm guessing he trained 3 months or 8 weeks, I'm not sure, 8 weeks or 12 weeks. But you see there, I think the Ellis fight went a good 11-12 rounds. Then, when's that, November? The American dating system, I think that's it, or whatever. I find it a bit more confusing. Right, Jurgen Blin. That was a quick turnover, but look, there's only a month and 9 days between these two, and this one went 15. Must have done, or it could have went 12 because it wasn't a. Well, there is a title, but it could have been a 12-rounder. But that's still, you're still getting hit. He was still getting hit. He was getting hit a bit in the Ellis fight. As his friend from Louisville, Jimmy Ellis, who actually was trained and managed by Dundee, which is why he let Dundee be in Ellis's corner. Funny kind of scenario. That would also happen to be why he maybe struggled as well. But up to the Foreman fight, Muhammad Ali kept very busy, and I guess he was trying to keep ring rust off, but I think he was also getting frustrated because he couldn't get the rematch with Frazier for quite some time, as we'll see here. Jurgen Blin, I think Jurgen Blin was quite an easy matchup. Mac Foster, that one went for unanimous decision. And yeah, literally a month after, he's going in against George Chuvalo. George Chuvalo ain't no, stay busy kind of fight. Like, George Chuvalo has the potential to upset, even though the record is not fantastic. But George Chuvalo's strong. He's not a guy you can get rid of. The guy's got a chin made of granite. And then, little under 2 months after, Jerry Quarry. I think that's the one that went pretty quick. I want to say that was the 3-round fight. Somebody will know better, but you see in there, he's turning over pretty quickly, and he's fighting another guy. Once again, don't focus so much on the record. Jerry Quarry, yeah, he got beat by Ali and Frazier and a few others, but Jerry Quarry is still another guy. Punches very hard, even though he was really a cruiserweight. A lot of these guys were kind of cruiserweights or light heavyweights, but he's not someone you want to take for a tune-up fight. Alvin Blue Lewis, I think he was quite an easy matchup, and yeah, there's not even a month between the last two fights, so he's probably in good shape. But was he sparring? You don't want to be sparring that much, It's a lot of trauma, head trauma, and heavyweights aren't really known for being good body punchers. Even someone like a Tyson, he went to the body, but I still wouldn't consider him a body puncher. Ali wasn't a body puncher. All these guys, they weren't, going to Ali's body, or, they were trying to take his head off, trying to knock him out. Because they realised, well, we're not going to outbox him, look how great he moves. Even though, at this point, it was really not moving so much. But he was still, he was still okay defensively. He was getting hit more. And then, he's had the rematch with Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson was 35 by the end, 37. So, not too risky, but Floyd Patterson is still not a guy that... Well, to be fair, there's 2 months between those two, which is enough if you, time it right with your sparring. If you just keep in shape, keep running, and do a little bit of sparring, because you need that timing, and you're not going to go too tough, because it's only this, is it North American Boxing Federation title. You don't want to be training like a demon, you don't want to be training for months for a title like that. I'm not saying that it's bad to fight for this title, but because at the end of the day, he was making up for lost time. But if you look, there's about 5 or 6 fights in 1972 alone. And you got, well, he had a good year, but there's 2 unanimous decisions back to back. TKO. I wish I could see the rounds. The Floyd Patterson one, I think, went 6 or 7. And that it was a referee's technical decision. And that Bob Foster fight, the Bob Foster fight, I watched it recently, and I don't know, Muhammad Ali didn't look spectacular, I must say. He kind of, I want to say he carried Foster a bit. He was never troubled or anything. He didn't really get hit hardly at all by Foster. Actually, Foster, even though he was a light heavyweight, you would think he would have the advantage at least in speed, because he really wasn't much bigger than a light heavyweight. He was still a skinny, kind of lanky frame. But that one, Muhammad wasn't really looking very spectacular at all against a light heavyweight who Frazier knocked out in a couple of rounds. And I know the styles is different, and ultimately Muhammad Ali defeated Joe Frazier twice, but Muhammad Ali should be getting rid of a Bob Foster for fun, really. I think the corner actually had to throw it. There was knockdowns, but there's just a lack of enthusiasm there or something. He could have been lighting Foster's face up with a jab a bit more. Okay, Joe Bugner, that wasn't so bad. But then look, about what, 5 weeks later, you're fighting a Ken Norton. Now at this time, Norton was a kind of an unknown quantity. Ones in the boxing circle knew him as a guy who was trained by Eddie Futch, a guy who used to spar probably lots of rounds with Joe Frazier. I think Norton probably helped Joe Frazier to get ready for the Ali fights. But if you know Ken Norton, you don't train, only, you don't train any less than 8 weeks, and you really get your stamina down, you get your great sparring, because he's not a guy that's coming for a paycheck, he's coming to win, and he did win. He broke Ali's jaw, and Ali will admit it himself that it was a fight that he possibly took too lightly, but not in the rematch. He got the split decision, And Norton was always going to be stylistically hard, but that's what I'm saying. You have to be on your game if you're a Muhammad Ali fighting Norton. There's a Rudy Lubbers. I only found out a few months ago that Muhammad fought this guy. Unanimous decision. So he's got a bit of a break there. You know, what's that? 20th of October, 28th of January. So between this Rudy Lubbers outing and the Frazier rematch, you got what, 3 months and 8 days. So, you know, keep in shape, and you can probably start sparring after 4 weeks. That's doable. And Muhammad Ali's, what I respect about him is he can fight anyone anywhere. Look, he fought this guy in Jakarta, and he fought an American in Alvin Lewis in Dublin, and he fought Mark Foster, I think, in Japan. He fought Jürgen Blin in Jürgen Blin's country, Jürgen Blin's German, I think, but he fought him in, was it Switzerland? You got to respect that too. It was no wonder he was so popular. So he fought Frazier. He actually done pretty well in that rematch. And then he fought Foreman, and he beat Foreman. He took punishment in the Foreman fight too, don't get it wrong. I know Foreman wasn't really landing many clean headshots, but Foreman was winging to the body plenty. So you got between, was it Jerry Quarry and Foreman, you're talking about 18, 19 fights or something. I think he was 29-0, so, and I think he was 49-1 or something when he, or 47-2. Let me see if I can find the record for Muhammad. This is okay. 44-2, so it was his 46th fight. So it had a good 15 fights in 4 years. And let me just check here. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He went the distance 8 times. So it's tough going. And Muhammad was probably thinking about his brand, and he was trying to get his ring rust off. And he's actually incredibly brave and incredibly confident to take on tough challengers like, for example, Ken Norton, and instantly rematching him, fighting guys like Joe Bugner, who are also coming to win, great boxers such as him. You do have to respect them for it as well, keeping himself busy, making himself relevant, building his brand, doing a fantastic job, and he was still very famous. Then he beats Foreman, and see, this kind of spacing's pretty good here. October to March, he fights Chuck Wepner. That's a rough fight, by the way. And then, yeah, you go on Chuck Wepner to Ron Lyle. Ron Lyle is a guy who dropped Foreman, and a big puncher. You want more than 6 weeks to train for a Ron Lyle, but he actually really put on a dominant display. Bugner, yeah, okay. Bugner, Frazier. Okay, Frazier was a big money fight, so the space, but it's good. And then as a champion who's still defending here, he's fighting this Koopman guy in Puerto Rico, Jimmy Young. But then I watched this broadcast recently, a few months ago, because I'm really a Muhammad Ali student. This is why I can kind of discuss this in depth. But in the Jimmy Young, he'd already said that he was fighting Norton. He was looking very ahead. He says, like, I'm fighting Norton this year, I'm doing this. But Jimmy Young nearly beat Muhammad Ali. And Jimmy Young was actually a pretty underrated fighter, even by now, I'd consider him, because he did beat George Foreman. And I know Muhammad Ali had beaten him, but Foreman had, racked up some wins as well. But Jimmy Young, actually, some people say that he would actually deserve to win that fight. And then he fought Dunn. Dunn was, quite a quick fight. 5 rounds, I think. Norton, you see, people think that Ali lost that fight as well, but his sort of his charisma and stuff won the fight. But you could really tell that he was slowing down. Like, he was standing a lot, and this was post Zaire, so there was more of this rope-a-dope strategy, and his voice was slowing down significantly. This was after Frazier too, in Manila, and that was tough on Ali. It was tough on Frazier too, don't get it wrong. And then you got Evangelistic, and then you got Shavers. Yeah, Muhammad Ali at 35 fighting Ernie Shavers. How did he even get to the end? That's what I don't know. Shavers wasn't the most skillful guy ever, and that's probably why he never actually won a title. A world title, that is. Then he kind of takes this Olympian with 7 fights lightly, Leon Spinks, light heavyweight, amateur gold medalist at the 76 Olympics. And then he beats him, but his career's over. Then you got Holmes and Burbick. So it's just putting things into perspective. I appreciate what he done in a sense, because at least he's showing that he's brave enough to fight anyone. But probably 72 was probably quite a hard year on him, and I wouldn't have recommended just fighting so many guys back to back. Like, he could have put Mac Foster there, because I think he fought George Chuvalo twice. I could have replaced. Okay, let me see here. Is that the 1st of April? So he could have had George Chuvalo in there, and then maybe an Alvin Blue Lewis somewhere between these. He didn't really need to rematch Jerry Quarry. And then he could have had a Bob Foster somewhere in here. And he's probably guaranteed himself, more paydays as such. And he could have fought maybe, I don't know, Jerry Quarry's maybe Italian, I don't know, like, there's no Irish people here, but I was thinking you could fight someone with Irish roots in Dublin. So he could still get that global status. But I don't know. He kept himself very busy, but there weren't no cream puffs most of the time. And then even in 75 there you got 1, 2, 3. You got 4 fights. And you're fighting guys like Chuck Wepner, Ron Lyle, Joe Bogner and Joe Frazier. I mean, that's a hard year. But and then he gives it a bit of space, and then he fights Koopman and Young and everything, and then I think he makes a film. And does he write his biography in 76? He kept insanely busy anyway. He was doing talk shows and everything all the time and meeting presidents and going here and going there. He was extremely busy, but even though he made a ton of money, he wasn't maybe the. You see, I don't want to say that it was bad that he fought so many guys, because at the end of the day, he was, he was becoming like the best at his craft, becoming, the best in his rankings in the heavyweight division. Maybe if he spread them out more or something like that, he could have made it work. And I mean, I think a Foreman rematch would have been interesting, but I don't. What was I gonna say? Like, it would have been much harder for Muhammad Ali to defeat George Foreman in a rematch. You probably would pick Ali to knock Foreman out again anyway. You'd probably pick the fight to go the distance, and there would probably be a slight change in the strategy against George Foreman. But it's a great career nonetheless. Do I have anything else that I want to pick up? I could use that record there to dissect and say, like, Muhammad Ali has a better resume or whatever than Floyd Mayweather, or he's a better fighter because he's fought so many, oncomers or whatever, like Shavers, dangerous guy. You got Norton, top contender, Jimmy Young, top contender to really a top 10 contender. Joe Frazier, obviously, elite. Joe Bogner, top contender. Ron Lyle, sort of top maybe 15, dangerous guy, maybe even top 10, dangerous contender. I wasn't about in the 70s, but you see, if I saw Muhammad Ali fighting Ron Lyle, I would probably choose him to win, but I would be a bit skeptical. I'd be like, well, Ron Lyle, drop George Foreman, a guy with a good chin. He could put Ali away too. And just another thing I want to talk about is the rope strategy. I think the rope strategy was really detrimental as well as a good thing, because at the end of the day, organs can't really strengthen themselves if they're getting punched. You can kind of improve your organs' function through diet and maybe sleep and not taking in any strange external chemicals or something like that, but I would just say that rope-a-dope can't be good in your kidneys, can't be good on your liver. I think had Muhammad Ali retired maybe in 76, fought Shavers in 76, push it back a year, say, instead of, let me see, because it was good of him to fight Jimmy Young, I thought that was a good opponent, say, instead of fighting Ken Norton or something, and then called it off there, he would have still been an absolute all-time great. And even if he would have fought Larry Holmes in the 75, 76, Larry Holmes wasn't actually too well known then. Larry Holmes fought on at least one of the undercards of Muhammad Ali's events. I think the Thrilla Manila. So Larry Holmes was actually building up his record too, and it was the Ken Norton fight in 78 that brought Larry Holmes into the forefront. But he wasn't taken seriously for a while because they thought he was kind of a clone of Muhammad Ali and all this, but he turned out actually to be just as good, possibly better. And I would have liked to have seen that, you know, a sort of younger Ali fighting a young Holmes. But yeah,